Welcome back, William Wood, your host. I am super excited about today's show. Today, I saw and heard one of the most profound things that I've ever seen or heard anywhere, anytime, under any circumstances. And I'm going to tell you about it here in just a minute. Also, if one of the shows has deeply touched you, send a link. Send a link out to a friend. Send a link out to a neighbor. Send a link out to someone in your church. Send a link out to someone who needs hope, because this show is designed to give hope. And my mission, my vision, is to literally transform the lives of people all over this planet by one person sharing with another. So, today, I'm in South Africa. It's March the 4th. I'm recording this a couple days before it's airing, so it can show up to you at a predictable time. And I went out to Robben Island, which is just off the coast of Cape Town. It is the place where Nelson Mandela was imprisoned for years. And I forget exactly how many years. I want to say it was either 17 or 19 years there in Robben Island. And he was confined to a small prison cell where he mined lime. Every day, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours a day for years. So for those of you who don't know the Nelson Mandela story, I'm going to go ahead and recommend a book. And I've just started it myself, but I was so moved by what I saw today that this is absolutely one of the next things I'm going to read. Nelson Mandela, since I've known about what he's done after coming back to power, has been, in my opinion, one of the greatest leaders that has ever walked the face of the earth. One of the greatest men politically to ever have been in power. And what he did after prison is stunning, especially after knowing the rest of the story. So the book recommendation is Long Walk to Freedom. And it is written by Nelson Mandela. He actually wrote this book while he was in prison at Robben Island. So what did I see and what did I hear today that absolutely rocked me to the core? Well, first off, let me tell you a little bit about my impression of the prison. And then I'm going to tell you about an experience that happened there right at the end of my visit that floored me. It was one of the most impressive and profound things that I have ever heard. My tour guide's name was Sparks, and Sparks was a former inmate in Robben Island, or at Robben Island. He was imprisoned from 1983, I believe, until 1990. He was a 17-year-old young man when he was imprisoned. And he's come back now that that prison has been converted into a memorial. A memorial to freedom. A memorial to the human spirit. A memorial that says that all of us are brothers and sisters. All of us are from the same race, the human race. That there is no black, there is no white, there is no nationality of one form or the other. We are all in this game together. And so Sparks was giving us a tour of Robben Island. And he showed us the circumstances that the prisoners were in. The prison cells themselves were of a couple of different types. The first type of prison cell was about 5 feet by 10 feet in length. There were no windows. I mean, there were bars, there were openings, but there was no glass on the windows. And so if it was hot, it was burning hot in that prison. If it was cold, it was freezing cold. And down here on the Cape, in the wintertime, there are terrible torrential rains. There are terrible winds and frigid night air, and that wind would whip right through that prison, according to Sparks. Then there were group prisons. The group cell that Sparks showed us, he actually showed us the cell that he spent the majority of those 7 years in. And it was a group cell, 60 people in a room that couldn't have been more than 1,400 square feet, if that. Just a tremendously small area for so many men. All cramped in, again, cold and wet and rain and heat, incredible heat, and no shelter. For 17 years, waking up at 4 a.m, and then going out to mine lime with a handheld tool, like a little pickaxe, and then bringing it back into a courtyard and breaking up the limestone into gravel, turning the limestone into gravel with a small hammer. Whack, whack, whack. Day in and day out, the conditions were less than ideal. If the prisoners did anything that the prison guards didn't approve of, the prison guards would take them into a back room and they would beat them. They'd hit them with clubs. They'd punch them. They'd step on them. They'd kick them. 17 years of beatings. Now, Sparks didn't say this, but I observed carefully how Sparks was walking, and I am a careful observer of human nature. He described the repeated beatings that the prisoners would have at the hands of the prison guards. And Sparks himself had a shoulder and a hip that were very guarded and restricted in motion. And it seems to me that Sparks was probably beaten in that prison. But not only were the men beaten, but if the guards didn't like anything that the prisoners were doing, they would deprive them of food and water. They'd put them in solitary confinement. No food, no water for 24 hours. And if they really wanted to punish the prisoners, they would give them this type of porridge. That had no substance, no flavor. It was mostly water. And they'd feed that to them for 30 days, literally keeping them on the edge of starvation for 30 days at a time. Sometimes intermixing beatings and additional solitary confinement in the mix of all that. And Nelson Mandela was subjected to all of it. He was subjected to the beatings. He was subjected to starvation. He was subjected to solitary confinement, as were the other prisoners. All of this is almost inhuman. And one of the thoughts that came to me as I was walking through the prison was, how can one human being treat another human being like this? Can you imagine being subjected to that level of confinement, isolation, torture, and despair? I can't even imagine. Now, of course, Nelson Mandela was a political prisoner, and he was a political prisoner because he was fighting for freedom for his people, and his people had used some force to do that. But what impresses me is not what Nelson Mandela did before prison, but what he did after prison. And what the men who were imprisoned did once they were released. Because I can imagine coming out of that experience of being suppressed, being beaten, being starved, and coming out of the experience an angry man. Coming out of the experience wanting vengeance, wanting revenge. And yet, when Mandela came out of prison, he quickly rose to power. He quickly rose to a place where he had the ability, with only one incendiary speech, to set the whole country on fire and to punish his white oppressors. And many of us would even say rightfully oppress the people who had thrown him in prison, put his people down, had tortured him and beaten him. And yet that is not what happened. That is not what he did. So one of the women in our group went up to Sparks after he invited all questions and asked him the question that I think all of us wanted to ask but were too afraid to ask. And she said, Sparks, here you are taking us to your old prison cell. Here you are taking us to the place where you were tortured, you were beaten, and you were deprived of food, exposed to the elements, exposed to sickness, exposed to the inhumanity of man in the worst sort of way. What is it like to come back to this prison? How can you do it? And he looked at her and he said, I have forgiven those men. I have put that behind me. And now I get to teach people about freedom. And Sparks comes back to give tours so that people can see the place where he was held captive. And he has turned that prison, along with others, into a beacon of hope and humanity. He later in the tour, he spoke of forgiving and reconciling with the guards that had held him captive, that had beaten him, that had starved him. And I asked him, how long did it take you to reconcile with those men? And he looked at me in a moment of pure humility, and I felt the compassion pouring from his heart. And he said, it took a while. I was angry, but I was inspired by great men, great leaders who asked me to forgive them, who asked me to reconcile with them, and who asked me to put those experiences into the past. And because of these great men, because of these great leaders, I was able to do it. And I felt the humility in his voice. And I felt the sincerity. This man wasn't coming back to his prison anymore. This man, Sparks, was shining a light for the whole world to see. Transformed by love and compassion. And what impresses me about Nelson Mandela is not what he did to land himself in prison. What impresses me about Nelson Mandela is that he came out and preached peace and reconciliation and forgiveness. He broke down the walls that separated the races here in South Africa. And South Africa is still progressing. But I have great hope for South Africa because there were men like Nelson Mandela who, even though he was oppressed, even though he was put down, even though terrible things happened to him, he came out and reached out a hand of friendship, and he broke down the prison walls, not the prisons of Robben Island and others where he served, but the prisons of men's mind. I meditated as I took the ferry back from the island, and I spent some time reflecting as we crossed the ocean waves back to Cape Town. I was deeply moved, humbled even, that a man so wronged could turn the other cheek and return good for evil, kindness for hate. And my challenge for you today, wherever you are, whoever you are, is to do what Nelson Mandela did. Who is it that has hurt you? Who is it that has harmed you? Who is it that has oppressed you? I challenge you today to make a decision to forgive them. Now, that may not mean going back out to hang out with them, but can you reach down in your heart like Sparks did, inspired by great men, to forgive and to reach out the hand of friendship? And together, if we do that, the entire world can change. Did you like today's show? If you did, ask yourself this question: who else might benefit from the information I just learned? All it takes to change someone's life is to share the link to today's show. Will you do that? When you leave a comment below today's post, you'll automatically be entered into a contest to win a copy of the book, Mindfulness, an 8-week plan for finding peace in a frantic world, by Mark Williams and Danny Penman. One person who leaves a meaningful comment will win a free copy of the book, Mindfulness, shipped directly to their home or business. To keep getting daily inspiration and motivation, scroll down to the bottom of the page and enter your name and best email address to subscribe to The Daily Show, which airs 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Most days, you'll hear from David Wood, my financial freedom mentor. 1 day a week, you'll hear from me. You'll also get several bonuses when you subscribe today, including a free MP3 version of my audio training, Relax. This 40-minute training will teach you how to harness the power of relaxation so that you can beat stress and live a life of peace. When you scroll down and subscribe to The Daily Show today, you'll also get a free PDF of today's message and an MP3 that you can listen to over and over again to reinforce the teachings in today's training. I look forward to seeing you again soon. My name is William Wood, and I believe in you.